Terry. I'm co-founder of Cheap and Nasty, and I wrote this little ditty.
I'm Herman, and we sang the song together. No more violence on TV.
It's great to have you on the show. Killer song. Can you tell me about it?
I was really annoyed about, well, I don't like hypocritical people to start off with, and at the time I was really annoyed with people saying all this stuff about no more violence on TV. Starsky and Hutch was dangerous for the kids, and well, they heard Satan in every record if it was played the other way around and all that kind of stuff. And I just really detest hypocrisy, so that's how I got to write this song.
Class. And Cheap and Nasty. How did that come about? Because you're fairly influential, like in the anarcho-punk rock world. You're kind of there from the start. Can you tell us about how that developed and what was going on beforehand?
Started in 1975 with there was a girl who was the drummer in the French band The News, but already in 75 she was at the shop of Malcolm McLaren in London, and then she went to Paris and founded the first all-girl punk band where she was the drummer. Unfortunately, she died a few weeks ago. Shama, aka Saskia de Jong, and well, that was 1975, and in 1976 punk started for Terry. She can tell about it, I think. And in 77 it started for me. I read a review in a Dutch music paper that about the Mont de Marsan punk festival, and they hated it. The news music paper hated it, and they hated especially the Loose. They said the Loose, they are slum girls, and their drummer, who is from Leiden, from my town, Saskia de Jong, she is not a real drummer. She acts like someone in an old-fashioned butcher shop, chopping meat with lots of bone fragments. And I was very angry when I read it, and I thought, well, punk can never be as bad as they write. I started to read Sniffing Glue and listen to the radio, and I discovered John Peel, and I decided I should start a fanzine, and I should start a band. Yes.
Class. So is that the start of Pin fanzine as well, is it?
Pin fanzine started in 1978, and the first subscribers and the first interviewees were Ivy Green, really the first punk band in the Netherlands. There were 4 teenage boys from Hazerswoude village, and when they started, they didn't know the Ramones, they didn't know the Sex Pistols, they just played punk without knowing it was punk, really.
Yeah,
And
class.
every time there were subscribers. Every time I went on my cycle from Leiden to Hazerswoude to bring them their copies of Pin fanzine, and also asked, is there any news about the band? Yes. So that was Pin fanzine, and I really met Terry because of Pin fanzine. Well, in 79, I was with my newspaper, and I saw Terry, and asked, "Do you want to read the fanzine?" Yeah, yes, and she says, "Well, I'm also a bass player," and that's I thought, well, that is great. Good bass player, good singer, good organizer, good songwriter, good looking. So she would be perfect to be in a band together. Well, and I met her again a few weeks later, and that was at a Ruts concert. Still was Malcolm Owen in Amsterdam and Paradiso, and then we decided to found Cheap and Nasty.
Class. What about yourself, Terry? How did you get into punk?
Well, I grew up in the days of bands only playing in stadiums where you needed binoculars to see anything.
Yeah.
And people telling us all the time, well, everything happened in the 60s and you missed out, so tough luck. But I did like the Kinks, who kind of were a punk band in their day because they didn't conform to anything. They always went their own way. So I read English music papers to read about the Kinks and other things. And that's when I read about punk in 1976. And I thought, ooh, but yeah, but this is the thing for me. So I tried to get in touch with other punks, check out bands, but well, Eddie and the Hot Rods played somewhere in Zeeland, but I had no transport, so I couldn't go there. So it took me till I got to Delft to study at the technical university, till I got into meeting other punks, and well, my punk days could start in '77.
Sorry, the Cheap and Nasty. You're saying that's 1979, and I believe your first gig was with Crass and the Poison Girls, was it, or something?
Yes,
Yes.
I first saw Crass in London in September 1978, and then I got their address, etc. I spoke to the manager, etc., and she asked me, well, we are coming to Amsterdam in November 78. Can you help us to get more gigs than just Amsterdam? And well, I tried in Leiden. I asked the biggest venue in Leiden, do you want a concert by Crass and Ivy Green from Hazerswoude? Well, they did not really like punk. They didn't want too many punk concerts. So Crass were nice enough to come to Leiden anyway, and we interviewed them for Pin then. And then at the end of 79, they said, again, we want to come to the Netherlands for a bigger tour. And then uh, they asked, can you get us a gig in Leiden? I tried again the same venues, but they still said, well, we don't really like punk. But there was another venue in Voorschoten, a village close to Leiden, and there they said, well, you can play there. Crass can play, Poison Girls can play, and your band, Cheap and Nasty, can play, and also some other local punk bands can play. So it was a kind of festival, really, and it was great. There were there were very many people from even from Amsterdam came to hear it, and it was. There were two 15-year-old girls who said, well, we want to come with you in your to your next concert. And I said, well, then you have to become our road crew. Well, they did. I'm still in contact with them, yes.
Brilliant, brilliant. And what about the music, the music that you're writing? Like when I listen to it, like when I listen to, you have the Cover Girl EP, that's 1981, we'll say. There's 4 tracks on it. There's Cover Girl, which kind of reminds me, the influence, there's like, I mean, from early anarcho-punk, we'll say, that kind of crass scene. I think your music isn't the same, and I take it it's kind of developed, like it's developed in the Netherlands, not in London or around. But Cover Girl would say, it reminds me a bit of Dirt, maybe, or something like that. Unknown then goes into, it's a really upbeat song. I'm a Photo Model is a real driving song, but it's really interesting that you have dual vocals and you have a sort of, when you sing, Herman, is a real slow, almost kind of, experimental kind of music going on. And then Terry, when you come in, there's like a solid punk rock anthem kind of song, and it kind of varies from one to the other, which is, really a unique kind of song, brilliant song. And then like No More Violence on TV, like we just heard it there, and the guitar tone, and I'm wondering then about how you recorded it. The guitar tone on that sounds like the Crass guitar tone. Now I've heard stories that Penny Rambo, anybody who would record or something like that, he would, try to push it in that direction. Where did you record it? Was it yourselves, or how did that sound? How did the sound of Cheap and Nasty develop?
We recorded it in a Dordrecht studio, and we got the money to hire a studio for one day. And Terry can best tell how we got the money for this one-day studio. Yes, yes. Say it, because you had broken your leg, etc.
Yeah, well, it was an accident. Somebody drove into me when we were crossing the road. He drove through red light, and that's how I broke my leg. And I got and I
We
got
can laugh now.
compensated.
We can laugh now, but I'm sure at the time it
Yeah.
wasn't particularly.
Yeah, it wasn't very pleasant, I can tell you. And I was lucky to have a martial arts background, because I flew through the air quite a few meters, and I was able to break my fall from
I
that.
had the
So I had
exact
lots of
same experience in Dublin years ago. And I have a martial arts background too. A car drove in front of a bus, and I kind of rolled over the bonnet of the car and landed on the ground on my feet. And I was like, "Yeah, you can
we were
help."
crossing a provincial road, and my brother was going to take me to the station.
Yeah.
And normally he would cross the road when red lights were red. But
Mm.
this time he thought, I've got my sister at the back, let's wait till it goes green. And on one side the cars had already stopped, and the other side there was only a car in the distance, so he started to cross. But he was going to eat pancakes with his fiancée, and didn't pay any attention until he saw the moped, which was more like a small motorbike, straight in front of him, and then he braked, but that was too late. And my leg got caught between the back wheel of the moped and the car. That's how it broke. And because he was driving pretty fast, I went through the air for about at least 10 meters, but I made a forward fall, and from that I was okay. But yeah, well, so I was not really amused. And
No.
he came to look me up in the hospital, and he turned all white because I said, "You threw a red light," straight after he got out of the car. And he's still in shock about what happened.
Yeah, it's
So,
something
but
you wouldn't forget.
nope.
Yeah. Sorry, you're saying the money came from the accident, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes,
Ah,
yes.
right.
And Herman had some money. So no, I got, because the guy was guilty as hell, of course, like I pointed out when I was lying on the tarmac. So he had to pay some money. Well, unfortunately, not the kind of money they pay in the USA, but still, it
Yeah.
was a decent amount. Because I couldn't do anything for quite a long time. And well, later when we decided, at some point we decided, well, let's make a record.
Yeah.
And well, we needed cash, and well, I said, I've got some cash, and Herman had some, so we put that together, and that's how we paid for the record,
All right.
Yeah,
basically.
How long does it take to produce that, or how long does it take to record and produce it?
One
one
day.
day,
One day.
one day. And we chose 4 songs, and they were all 4 songs written by Terry. But the point is, even though they were all written by the same person, they were all different
Very
songs.
different, yeah.
It was, and Terry asked me, well, now we have 4 songs by me. Shouldn't I drop one which was written by you? We both roughly each half of the songs that our drummer had written one song. So, and I said, well, we need the 4 best songs, and I think these are the 4 best songs. Yes.
Class, class.
Our drummer
Sorry,
agreed
what?
with
How?
that, so
Like getting back to the sound of Cheap and Nasty. Uh, what's your influences? Like, what I hear is I can hear a lot of early anarcho stuff, and I can hear I suppose an influence of Crass. Was it there, or is it just something you developed yourself? Or those 4 songs, what influenced the sound of them?
well, there were different influences. As a bassist, I was influenced by Jean-Jacques Brunel,
Right.
uh, because I didn't know how to play classical guitar, but that's just single notes. And a friend of my brother, he bought a bass guitar. Well, he told me he just got it to repair it because he wanted to study electronics. So he was messing about with amps and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what he told me, but he later admitted that he wanted to play it, but he wasn't very good at it. But I thought, hey, that's interesting, a bass guitar, can I play it? And he said, yeah, okay. So every time I would go and visit my friend, I would come over to his room and play the bass. But I thought it's a bit of a shame because I enjoyed it, but I thought bass is a bit of a background instrument, so don't know. But then I heard Jean-Jacques Benel, and that was something completely different. And well, then I thought that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I've got more influences of influenced by the Rosillos.
Yeah.
And yeah, many other bands really that were around at the time. And I didn't hear Crass well until that what was it, an album came out that I've still got, some first album or something.
The Feeding the 5,000
Yes.
or something, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one.
Yeah.
And
I just find it fascinating, I suppose, when I look back at the history of it, how, like even what you were saying earlier about in 1975, you've got kind of punk rock bands in the Netherlands. And that's due to a girl going over and sort of hanging out at Malcolm McLaren's sex shop, Vivian Westwood.
Yeah.
So you just got and then these things develop. Like it's not like today where you have, we're able to chat across the internet and across oceans. This is a time where these things are kind of co-developing. They're aware of each other, but they're independent in a way. What was the scene? What was the Dutch scene? Was it? What was that like? In contrast to London, did you feel part of what was happening in the UK, or was it completely an independent thing?
There was it was much more independent than the UK in the sense in the UK many of prominent punk bands like the Clash and the Damned got record deals by big labels. In the Netherlands there were hundreds of punk bands formed in the early days, but only 4 of them got major label contracts, and 3 out of the 4, including Ivy Green, were kicked out by the label after their first album, and one band, the Flying Spiders, were kicked out by the label after their second album. The problem was the Dutch radio. There was there was no John Peel in the Netherlands. There was a guy called Frits Spits, the leading DJ of Dutch radio, and he hated punk. The big record labels thought, well, these records are not played on the radios, so we'll kick out the punk bands with who we have. So all the other hundreds of bands, if they wanted to make a record, they had to do it on their own label, basically.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting what you said just a minute ago. That we had to sort it all out for ourselves. All we had was we could listen to John Peel if we had our ear to the radio, and it would go on and off depending on the weather.
Yeah.
And we had to sort everything out ourselves. And sometimes, we would go and try to get records, and basically work out ourselves what punk was about and music and everything. But we did feel connected with the UK because obviously that was the source of it. So we did travel to the UK, but a lot. So we got a lot of influence from that. I was hanging around in Brighton for quite a while in the late 70s, and later in Edinburgh.
Right.
So that definitely influenced us. Another thing is I just talked to someone in a band who's in a band now, and we talked about what is real punk and what isn't. And he said, yeah, what I like about the early punks, you had to work everything out for yourself. Everything came from yourself. It's totally different now. If you have bands now, they go to a pop academy. They study from from the internet. They spell out and show you from note to note how to play something and everything. And well, we just got a guitar. Well, I had some technical basics how to move my fingers, but I've never played with a pick. So you just work it out for yourself and you create your own sound, how you want it to sound.
But that is the story of back then. Like when I when you hear or you read about with Mick Jones of the Clash, yeah, he's a fairly accomplished guitarist, but he's only just become an accomplished guitarist when he joins them. If you look at Steve Jones and the Pistols, and again, a guy who, by his own admission, couldn't play at all, and then quickly learned how to play, and now he's top 100 guitarist in Rolling Stone, according to that. Like there's an individual sound. Every band does. There are bands that kind of copycat it, but there's an awful lot of there's a huge spectrum to the styles of music within the punk rock scene, and especially in the early days. And like you're saying, like whereas today music can be manufactured, you'll have a band that's either coming out of a music school, has been put together and is well connected with the industry and is a fly-by-night success, blah, 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 and it lasts a little while until the next one. Or you'll have, we'll say, independent bands, and unfortunately, you'll have put the hook in the beginning of the song, make sure it's applicable to TikTok. It's not manufactured, but it's following a prescription. And I think when I listen to your music, like I was saying, I'm a photo model. The fact that you could, in one half of the song, have this an experimental sound, and the next part of it driving punk rock beat and vary from one to the other, that couldn't happen today. Not with, well, it could. It could if people choose to. But there is kind of real punk, I suppose, still there. But yeah, it's an amazing thing to see. It's an amazing time, I suppose that was. What about nowadays? What's coming up? Is Cheap and Nasty going to play again?
Well, I wish it would be possible, but we have had health issues, etc. What will happen is we will be on an album of compilation album of early Dutch punk, which will be come out in Paradiso venue in the big hall of Paradiso in Amsterdam on the 31st of August, and our song No More Violence on TV will be one of the songs. There will be more early bands on it, like the Burks from Amsterdam, which we had much contact with, and also Tetje and the Flickers from Nijmegen, and other bands will also, from the early days of Dutch punk, will also have a song on that compilation album.
That's class, yeah. Because you had an exhibition, didn't you, of the fanzine pin in Amsterdam as well, didn't you? There was a
Yes, in the Rijksmuseum, the National Museum. That was because they had, the history department of the museum had bought some magazines from the 1960s. Well, but it turned out there was also stuff from the 1970s, including really all Dutch language issues of PIN. I had some English language issues as well, but they they had them, and they showed them at an exhibition on the third floor of the Rijksmuseum, and well, it could not be longer than 3 months, because else the light damages
oh yeah.
the paper. Yes.
Yeah. And I've seen that. I've seen some videos of that, actually, that exhibition. And when I look at the covers of Pin at that time, again, you have that aesthetic. Like either people have copied you 10, 15 years later, but there's the kind of, yeah, it's put together DIY, and you can see like how it's kind of maybe pasted together on a page, etc. So you got a self-publishing kind of aesthetic to it. Did you have any influences yourself before you
Well,
started?
Sniffing Glue, that was really the only, when I started, it was the only fanzine which I knew. There were fanzines in Amsterdam, the Koekrand of Diana Ozon, and was Carlo Edel had a fanzine called Razorblade, so two fanzines in Amsterdam, but I only found out after the first issue of Pin was published, and then we contacted them. We even organized a joint party when Pin existed for 6 months, for half a year, and Razorblade had existed for 1 year. Then we organized a party in a squat building with Ivy Green, the Bugs, and 4 other punk bands. It was great, really, yes.
And both of you worked on that, didn't you? You were kind of interviewing bands or on the Pin.
I first started with Ivy Green and Panic and Flying Spiders, but when the foreign bands played in the Netherlands, we also interviewed them. And I went in London to London, and there I interviewed Chelsea and also. And Patrick Fitzgerald, maybe you know him.
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, because there's a few people like, and then you turned up like years later. You were on Punks Listen, the Hope Collective in Dublin. So Niall McGurk's
yes.
book for the Ukraine, you were in that as well. So you're fairly prolific. You've got kind of exhibitions going on about fanzines. You've got a compilation of early punk rock in the Netherlands, and you're coming out with your song "No More Violence on TV," isn't it? Getting back to the original scene, was there many? Was there many punk rockers at these gigs, or?
Well, so it depended a bit. Our first concert with Crass, it was really jam-packed in Voorschoten, and later, for instance, we organized a tour with UK band Zounds. We had met them
Oh
at the
yeah,
place of Crass, Dial House, and they said we want to play in the Netherlands and in Germany. Can you organize something? Well, we organized, I think, the first DIY tour of a British punk band together with a Dutch punk band. They stayed at my place or on
yeah.
mattresses, etc. And we went to several places like Melkweg in Amsterdam, to Apeldoorn, to Berlin, and in Tilburg was really the biggest success when we had to play 3 encores there in Tilburg, yes, and all the audience invaded the stage, yes.
That was a memorable gig.
Yes, and so sometimes,
Well, and our gig in Berlin was quite something too, because at the time you still had the wall,
Oh
and
yeah.
you had to drive through Eastern Germany, and
How
you
was
had
that? What
no
was that like?
signals.
Because like that's like '89 it falls, so like I was a kid myself at the time. What was it like to drive through? What's the process of getting to Berlin?
Well, it already started at the border, basically,
Yeah.
because we were supposed to meet each other in Oberhausen, which is just across the border in Germany, because Herman knew where the venue was and where we had to go. And we were a bit faster because we were driving in a normal car, and Sounds did have this really old English ambulance in Bedford. So that couldn't drive any faster than 80 kilometers an hour, otherwise it would fall apart. So we left a bit later, and we got a bit late because our guitarist always liked to be a bit late.
Yeah.
So I would always, I later had the tactics to arrive at his house 5 minutes late, so he couldn't slow down to say, yeah, but you're early, I'm not ready yet. But still we were late, so we came to this parking place and there was no one to be seen. So we thought, uh-oh, they've already driven on. They thought we weren't coming. So, well, we better drive on to Berlin. So we drove through Eastern Germany, which was a long motorway where you were not allowed to take any takeoff or stop or anything.
Right.
Clearly watched by by the local, well, the East German
Stasi,
police.
probably, yeah.
Yeah, we weren't to be messed with.
Yeah.
And there were roadworks going on as well, so it was all a bit strange. Well, we got to Berlin, and well, then we had the problem. We didn't know what venue we were supposed to play at, leave alone where we were staying the night. So I thought, well, let's just go to the center, and there might be some places open that sell magazines. And then I just go and look in the magazines to see if our concert is in there, so I can see where we're playing. And then I can ask
That's
people where
brilliant.
that venue is, which is what I did, because I thought if we know where the venue is, we can then ask the people at the venue if they know where we're staying. So that's what we did. So that's how we got there. And it turned out that we were staying right next to the venue. So fortunately, they could tell us where we were staying. And when we
Yeah.
got in, there was no one. Well, the people who lived there were there, who lived at that squad were there, who organized the gig, but the others weren't there. And it turned out that they were stopped at the border, but Herman can maybe tell you that better, because the Bedford was not just a rundown Bedford English ambulance, which can drive too fast or it would fall apart. But it also had rundown tires, and they decided that the profile on the tires was not good enough. So there was a whole story. They had to get new tires, which
Wow.
took hours. And when they finally got there, well, that they thought, oh, but they're gone, and what we're gonna do now? And they found a note: "We're here. We've already gone to sleep."
Well, the West German border guards first told us, "No, you don't have good tires, we won't let you in." And then we had new tires. They strip searched, for instance, Steve Lake, the singer of Zounds, and they told me, "You are the only one who can speak German. You come out of the ambulance." Well, and I came out, but they didn't ask me anything to translate, and it lasted hours, and they had a sniffer dog, and poor dog was pushed into the ambulance, but he couldn't smell anything, and came out, and they pushed him in again, etc. Well, at last we could go through, and they said sarcastically, "Do you think that the East German border guards will let you through?" Well, we didn't know, but when we arrived at the East German border, it was 5 minutes. Yes. So completely unexpected from what you might expect. Yes.
But the Stasi treated you better than the West German police.
No, it was not a Stasi. It was just it was a
Yeah, I know.
5-year-old. Yes, yes.
I can tell
That's
you that,
brilliant.
but I can tell you it was a great asset that I could speak German as well, because that's how we could ask where to go, etc. And we did have a little thingy with police there too in East Germany, and I was very polite and could speak perfect German, so they let us through.
Yeah.
But what was funny was when we went back, because then we spread over the cars, and then I remember I was in the ambulance, and we got to the East German border of West Berlin, and we all had to get out, and they just couldn't stop looking at the drummer of Sounds, because they always had this idea of the West is really rich, you know.
Yeah.
And there was this punk guy, well, all of us dressed in rags, with his knees exposed right in November, and they just couldn't believe it that we were dressed in rags. So that was really funny. So they kept on looking at our pictures and at us, and yeah, they're really from the Western Europe. That was really funny.
That is brilliant. That is brilliant. Well, listen, guys, I can see time is coming against us. We have Terry and Herman here on the show from Cheap and Nasty. It was fantastic chatting to you, lads, and all the best.
And Chaos. Deadbeat's journey through the underground. Interviews, music, punk, community. Attitude. Sunday nights, 10 p.m. to 12. CRCFM 102.9.